Hi, welcome to the Personal History Hub. In this video, we're going to be looking at the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So, the success of the march in Selma created an atmosphere of optimism. So, on the 6th of August 1965, President Johnson actually signed the Voting Rights Act. So, remember that Selma happened in March 1965. So, what was actually in this act? So, it ended literacy tests. It ensured federal agents could monitor registration and step in if it was felt there was discrimination. It was presumed that if fewer than 50% of all a state's voting age citizens were registered, then racial discrimination was being exercised. So by the end of 1965, 250,000 Black Americans had registered to vote. So one third were assisted by government monitors who checked that the law was properly being followed. Registration was a slow process because the federal officials were trying to impose black voter registration in areas that did not want black people to vote. So they were still up against attitudes that did not want to move forward. By the end of 1965, there was a growing level of frustration among black people about how far the campaign for civil rights had actually improved their lives. Despite this, a further 750,000 black Americans had registered to vote by the end of 1968. So the number of elected black representatives increased rapidly after the bill was enacted. So King's policy of non-violence appeared to have worked in this situation. There was widespread support and sympathy from white Americans, and two key pieces of legislation had been introduced that removed discrimination and disenfranchisement. So you had in 1964 the Civil Rights Act is the other one we're talking about, and then obviously the year following this one, the Voting Rights Act. So, despite the success of King's organisation, other groups were emerging that opposed King's idea of non-violence, and there was a feeling among some that progress was slow and that too often King had been ready to make deals with the white authorities. So the Black Civil Rights Movement starts to kind of split into two directions now. So what were the actual effects of both the Civil Rights Act and then this Voting Rights Act? So many new rules have been put in place. So, for example, desegregation rules, but these new rules were ignored unless they were enforced by federal officials. So it often took the federal government stepping in to actually enforce these desegregation rules. There was also intense white resentment in places for the passing of such laws, especially in the South. Racism remained kind of a big part of life in the South. The passing of laws did not change the mindset of many of racist Southerners, and despite the passing of both acts, many black people in the South still face discrimination in housing, the workplace, education, access to medical care, and treatment by the police. So they were still being treated as second class citizens in some parts of America. Okay, don't forget to subscribe, and next video is going to be on Malcolm X.